Hello, students in Comp 3077 online and in our face-to-face sections, making use of these full production demonstration videos. This is Mike, your voice in the videos, course lead, Comp 3077. I am using a different mic this week, mic on a different mic, and it's slightly less body in the vocal. I'm sure most of you probably don't even notice, but just in case you did, it's not a bad microphone. It's just a bit of a different tone. It's just the one I had because I had left my other one sitting on a chair and didn't bring it. So this is our second to last iteration of the SAM case with the SAM quiz. We have 2 more weeks of this, weeks 11 and 12, and then we'll have the custom project in week 13. And then the final test in week 14. Just to remind you guys, you don't have anything in exam week in this course unless that's changed since the recording of this video, but typically you do not. So this case will have a slight menu change at the beginning of the case, a little bit different than all the stuff we had to deal with last week because we had a different file type. We're back to a normal Excel file type, and we're not adding an entire tab to the menu. We're just adding one item to one of the existing tabs. Then we're going to deal with some basic stuff, including data table projections that will then involve advanced charting and chart options, scenario creation, and summary reports. My visuals are catching up there. I just added that bullet there. Scenario creation and summary reports and the reports that come from these scenarios. This is all about projections and looking at different snapshots of what data might appear to be depending on certain amounts of sales or certain amounts of employees. Usually it has more to do with finances, which is a good segue into next week's case. We'll deal with some more pivot tables, which very often come up with finances as well. And we're going to do a solver model, which is something I had to do at Michigan State in the late 90s, freehand. And Excel had that tool then, but now it's much more commonly used to complete solver models, and it's awesome because you don't have to do the freehand stats. And not that you don't have to understand some basic statistics as business students, but at the same time, it's really cool that Excel will do that for you. So let's get started with the case. First thing we're going to do is add this menu item in. So if I pull up the top of the case here, I've already opened it and enable editing. I'm not even going to the SAM page here. I will jump over to FOL quickly. So I've got my usual, I've got the MindTap page opened up. Yes, I'm still here. Going to be ready to submit in a little bit. Week 11 information in FOL. Course learning outcomes. Always take a look at this. Remember that there's chapter notes that provide even more useful information about the stuff we're learning in there, and those are the things we're covering. And let's get started. So we do have a menu change to make in Excel this time around. And here you'll see that there is a way to do it on a Mac that's slightly different. I can't demo the Mac version of this as usual, but I will show you the PC version right now. So we're just going to add something to the data tab, this special solver tool. It's an add-in, as they call it. So I've already gone and change the name of my file. It's already done. Let's open it up. So I've got the file opened up here. I've already clicked Enable Editing. Doesn't really matter which worksheet you're on to do this. This is not technically a case step. It's just adding this in right here on a PC. If you're on a Mac, please do this. So on the PC, here's what you do. And just like last week when we were adding an entire tab to the ribbon, which was the developer tab, this time around we're going to add just an item to the data tab. So go to the data tab now so you can see it when it adds in. And you can do this either from file options like we did last week. Alternatively, as I showed you last week, you can also go to the quick access toolbar dropdown and go to more commands, or you follow the Mac instructions that I already showed you. So once you get to more commands, go to add-ins. Wherever it lands you here, whether you go to options or more commands, just go to add-ins. And down at the bottom, you'll see Excel add-ins. You click go, and then you check the box for solver right here and click OK. So little things like this, when I get down to the last 2 cases, I do go a bit more quickly. If you need me to slow down, you can slow the video down, you can pause and rewind and watch it again. But you need to get this checked and click OK. And then after a couple seconds, you will see it appear at the end of the data tab. And that is something then that you will use the third or second to last step on the case, the solver tool. So the solver add-in tool, it's an analysis tool. And from that point, we're going to go right here and start with step 1. Okay, so you don't need to use it right away, but you can stay on the data tab. You're going to need it soon anyway. So for step one, the first thing you're going to do is, and don't forget if you're on a Mac, you got to do it this way, okay? So you're working for Pedro, sales analyst at a footwear company. He's asked you to try and help him increase profits. You're going to analyze things and see where you could do better, make some more money. So first thing you're going to do is use some data that's already been set up as data across the top line of a data table, which you often will reference because you're never typing in the data more than once. You have the data somewhere calculated or typed in, and then you make a reference to it every time. As luck would have it, this data here has been named. So you need to complete ABCD by referencing the named cells that are these cells. This is not a named range. We've dealt with names in several cases, and this is, again, a benefit when you name a cell, like units sold, for example, even if it happened to be on like another worksheet, like 4 worksheets over, you could just start typing in the name knowing that it's there, and it'll autocomplete for you. It'll set up. So in D6, we're going to put in units sold. So literally, this is the simplest formula you can do. It's called pointing to a cell. I think we had this in another case. Equals, and units sold are in B6. But you're not going to type in B6, even though this would all calculate correctly if you did. You have to use the name of it. So if I escape out of that quickly, and I go over here and I sit on B6, you'll see that's the one called units sold. But you don't even need to know which is which, although you could figure it out pretty easily by just looking at the labels here. It's telling you in the step, use units sold. So just start typing in units, and it auto-completes. You don't even have to finish typing it in. Just double-click and hit enter. And then the next 3 are done exactly the same way. For this one, we're going to use total revenue equals TOT, there it is right there, total revenue, enter. This one is total expenses, which is the one right at the top, double click, enter. If you want to type it all the way out, you can, but it's easier once you start typing it. So this is net income. If you type in the word net, it auto-completes for you right here. All you got to do to accept the auto-complete is double click on it and then hit enter. So now you have the top line of data, which is the revenue, expenses, and net income that resulted from selling 38,500 units. So here's a cool question to ask Excel. And this is not AI. This tool has been around for a while. The data table tool is, okay, cool. So I have the exact amount that I earned for revenue. I had the exact amount I spent on expenses, and I have my net income for selling 38,500 units. If according to 38,500 units sold, this was the revenue, this was the expenses, and this was the net income. Based on those numbers, what would it be if it was 30,500, 32,500, 30? So what you do is figure out how this is distributed across that many units, and then you do the same thing. But there's, of course, a tool that will do this for you through the whole table, as long as you have an input that you identify and you have data in the top row. That's what you always need, is data in the top row. So what you're going to do the last part, which is item number E here, is you're going to select D6 through G16, so D6 to G16, and you're going to use a tool called Data Table. This is under the Data tab, What If Analysis, Data Table. Now, you will often have a row input cell, which is the item that's going across in rows, identifying, or at least affecting the data in that direction. And you'll have a column input cell for the item that's going up and down, which is all you have for this one. So you're going to click on column input cell, and your column input cell will be B6. Now that happens to be named units sold, but when you're using a data table, it doesn't take on the names because it makes calculations that will then be there, and you don't want them to be affected if you change the name of a cell. So it will always use just B. So if you click on it, it won't even put the name in there. It just puts B6 in there, absolute, with the absolute referencing. If you just type in B6, it will still work because it will make it absolute for you after you click OK. And what we're going to do is click OK. Once we have that in there, that's it. So what if analysis, data table, column input is all you have here. You click OK, and it does these calculations. And if you click on the calculations, you will see, like, it's not even, like, it just tells you this is based, they all look exactly the same. And that's the calculation, but you wouldn't manually ever put that in there. That's just indicating you're running a data table, you're using B6 as the column input, and based on these numbers in the top row, this is what it would. So you won't even make money until you get up to 36.5. You might make money at 35, might break even somewhere there, but you're going to do a chart to figure out where the break even is. So that's your next step. So that's a data table. Very cool tool. It would take you a long time to calculate all this based on those three numbers in the top if you had to do that. So it's projecting out what it would be based on the top row of existing data. So now you don't need to highlight that. You're actually going to highlight D5 to F16, and you're going to make a scatter with lines chart. So back here, we're going to go to the Insert tab. You'd likely be leaving the Data tab when I went back onto the Home tab. And charts are in the center of the Insert tab. You're used to this. We are going D5 over to F and down to 16. Just a heads up, I just had paused the video to listen to my mic really quickly because I am using a mic I don't usually use, and it was a little bit sizzly. So I've just turned it down a bit. You guys won't, I shouldn't even mention this, but hey, maybe you're interested. It's too high. It was too maxed out. So I've just turned it down a bit, but the volume will be leveled out by my production tool. So D5 over to F down to 16. We have that highlighted, D5 to F16, and then you pick your chart. So I'm on Insert tab. Recommended charts will get you there, but I always prefer to use the categories. I just go scatter with line, scatter with lines. That's the markers. Just straight up scatter with line. Okay. And we are good here. So just a heads up, I don't know why. I had done this one time on a practice, and I swear I highlighted D5 to F16, and after I made the chart, I noticed right away it had skipped over and included the total. It was weird. So make sure at this point that your chart looks pretty much like mine, and then right away you can drag it over. You're supposed to have this in H4. That is right, H4, right? Yep, H4, and then the other one's in M16. Now, I always like to turn the grid lines on and off just to make sure of this, but you don't really need to do that here. Just use the columns and the column letters and the row numbers, and just make sure you're not touching. So despite what the instructions always show you, you don't have to jam right into the corner. Just get it just a little tiny bit below the top of row 4 and a little bit to the right of the beginning of column H. And this one is M16, so get it just a little tiny bit above the bottom of row 16 and over. Yeah, perfect. Okay, good. So we're good. Just don't be touching. If you look at the instructions, it will likely show that it's just perfectly jammed right into the corners of those. Yep, it always does. But I'm always out to make sure you guys get this right. And they usually, up to this point, they said left corner H4, right corner M16. They didn't even give you that in this case, because at this point, they just figure you know what they're talking about. So I showed you what to do. So that's step 2, move on to step 3. And again, make sure at this point that your chart looks like mine. If for some reason it didn't pick up the right data, you can just delete the chart, click on the chart, delete it, go back and make sure you have this data. Now, chart title, part A of step 3, break even point. Copy the text, go to the title box, double click in it, highlight over the text, right click paste, control V, whatever. Actually control V, because right click doesn't even work in there, because it gives you a bunch of other options to do with the title. So control V, paste it in. You'll notice right away it's taken on the formatting from the Word file. That is totally fine. You will not get that wrong, but just as a best practice, it's too late. I could have clicked on that and said keep text only, but I didn't. But that's okay. Then you see when I turn it in that I still get it right. But as a best practice in the business world, I would keep the formatting of the chart that it gave you just so it's consistent. That was part A. Okay, and then we're going to do some bounds adjustments. And you could already see that coming because there's a lot of extra white space in the plot area that we do not need. So click on the horizontal axis, which is the one that goes from side to side across. And you're going to go 30,000 minimum amount. So click on it, right click, format axis. Remember all this from the chart case and other cases with charts. Type in 30,000, hit enter. You'll notice it probably auto set some of the other bounds as soon as you did that, and that is totally fine. It even tells you in the instructions if other bounds were automatically adjusted, don't worry about it. Then go to the vertical axis, click on it, right click, format axis, and it wants you to change this up here to 2.5 million. So you can type, you can see here it's scientific numbering, just the 5. So you could do 2.5 E6, or you can type out 2.5 million. I'd rather not type all those zeros. So I'm just going to type 2.5 E6, hit enter. We are now using our white space in the plot area dramatically better. And that's it for the chart. So I went, again, fairly quickly, as I tend to do in weeks 11 and 12, because we've done a lot of this stuff before. Save your file. You get those changes in there. I'm going to scroll down quickly, make sure that chart looks like mine, and it totally does. And we're good to move on to the next step, which is going to be step 4. So for step 4, that data table tool, excuse me, was pretty cool. Let's try a 2-variable data table tool. And for this one, they've already put in the top row of data. So we're going to do D20 to I30. So D20 over to I and down to 30. And data tables back to the data tab. What if analysis, data table. And so price is going to be a row input here. Column input is probably still the quantity. So, and it is, yeah. So row inputs B7, column inputs B6 again. And then we're going to do a custom format, which is pretty cool, but let's do this first. So B7 and B6, you can type them in or click on them. B7, B6, I'll just type these ones in so you guys know you don't have to type out the absolute referencing. And when you click OK, it will work. So the only difference between this one and the other one is this one is also including price, not just the quantity. And then based on how these prices work according to this amount of revenue or cost, whatever, is that revenue? Yeah, that's net income, sorry. According to this amount of net income, it'll calculate the rest for that amount of net income. And you click OK, data table's done. You can see it takes a while for you to be making money. You got to be selling over 36,000 and you got to be at 97.50. If you're selling them all in the 70s, you're losing money the whole time. So this is very useful, especially if you start your own business, you're in a retail setting, you're trying to figure out where you're making money on the products you're selling, where you can accept a loss, when you've sold a bunch of products for full price, how you can do sale price and all this kind of stuff. It's really cool. So we've done another data table. If you click on there, you can see it's got that same sort of code in there. It's not a formula, but it's the coding for the data table, this one with 2 variables instead of 1 like the other one. And part number C says, okay, in D20, we want people to know what actually is there. Okay, the units per price cell. So that's back here in D20. And that number is a little out of range from the rest of the numbers we're calculating for. So what you can do, this is a pretty neat trick. This is not naming a cell. This is not the same as going up here or going to the formulas tab and going define name and defining a name for a cell. Not the same thing. This is a format that will allow the number to remain in the cell, but visually on the surface of the spreadsheet show words instead, or show whatever you want to put as a result of what we call a custom format. So ideally, you should just go back to the home tab in the format cells area of the menu, which is here, which it says number. And what you're going to do, because you don't see this as an option here, and even though it's already set to custom because that's accounting with reduced decimals, so technically it's a custom format, you're going to go here and it's going to default to custom. And then you're going to use where you see, which usually it provides it to you, and it doesn't look like it's doing that here on my machine. So I'm actually glad this is happening. So what you want to look for is text in quotes as an alternative format for the number that's in there. Another way to get to here, by the way, and if you don't want to even bother having to go to the home tab, here, I'll just cancel out of there. You can just right click on the cell and go to format cells, and it should default to custom because you're already on custom. So generally speaking, as I just mentioned a minute ago here, I've always had an option that shows text in quotes as the quote unquote format to show instead of this number. I don't have that option here. I see some quotes and some different scenarios here with different amounts of numbers and decimals in different places and all this stuff, but it just doesn't come up. And maybe that's has to do with my new settings, but it's just as easy to do it this way. So literally just go up here, ignore the fact that you don't have, if you have an option that shows like a proposed name and it puts it in quotes for you, choose that option and then just change the words that are in the quotes specifically to units/price. If you don't have that option, which most of you is probably the same as mine, if you downloaded this from Fanshawe and you've been updating your office, just go in here and just go to general. Where is my custom? Actually, you're going to have to choose one where it allows you to customize it. There, okay. So, wow, I'm glad you had to watch me do all that. You could see I was trying to click on different ones and then just delete it, but you can't click on one. If you go to custom format and it doesn't give you an option in quotes, you actually have to delete what's in the box and then you can type that in there. But as soon as you get something in there, it recognizes as a format, which it has because I put quotes around it. See, it's already there. So if I need to fix that or you have a typo, just delete it and then put a quote, put your text in, end a quote. So when I click OK, what's going to happen is it's going to show that in the cell, but it's still making a reference to the cell net income, which was that number which was in there. And net income is here. That's the cell name, net income. So it's just a cell reference. So it's a really cool tool to use for a custom format. But as you could see when I went in there, I was accustomed to going into, let's go to that one actually, and seeing down at the bottom of custom some kind of option in quotes. And then I would just go in here and change the words. The way it's set up now with the newest version of Office that I have here, you have to put it in. So you just simply click delete and then put that in there and make sure there's quotes around it and click OK. And you've got this super duper custom format. And that is the end of step 4. Step number 5, we are going, they're already on this worksheet. So there's 2 scenarios on this worksheet. So what a scenario is, just to explain, I'm not sure which cells they're using these on. So go to the data tab, go to what if analysis and go to scenario manager. Yeah, so you see scenarios for cells B6 to B7 and B19 to B21. And if you go to edit one of these, which you're not going to do because they don't say to do that, you can alter what's in these cells and prevent. So click OK, and you can see it sets up a series of numbers that you can load into these cells. So obviously this is way better than having multiple worksheets to show a bunch of different scenarios. You can just load up and say, here's what it would look like if we sold this many units. Here's what it would look like if we sold this many. Or here's what it would look like if we wanted this much net income. And you can put these into the cells without having multiple versions of the worksheet. It's a very useful tool. So we're not going to mess with any of the versions that are there. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a new scenario. So we're going to create a scenario using the data shown in bold in table 1. Increased price. So that's the name of the scenario. And these aren't like named ranges or table names. You can have spaces and stuff like that. So keep in mind the 2 scenarios that are already there need to stay intact. You don't mess with them. And then the current scenario assumes the current values for units sold. The reduced scenario assumes more units sold at a lower price. He asks you to create, I don't know why I bolded that. That was weird. He asks you to create a scenario that assumes fewer units sold. So this is create a scenario using data table. It's going to be called increased price. So we can start there and then we can add this stuff in there as we are requested to do so. So you're going to go to what if analysis. We're already on the data tab. Go to scenario manager and add a scenario. So we already have current and reduced price. We're going to add one called increased price. You can copy and paste that in there too. And it's going to be by changing cells. It probably already knows B6 to B7, B19 to B21. And B6, yes, because those were the other scenarios it already has. So, and it just assumes you're going to do another one for the same cells. So when you click OK, it's going to give you what's in there, and you're going to put in what you need to put in there, and it gives you the list. And then you have the scenario you can load up. It's pretty cool. So units sold is 37.5. So you can just change that to 37.5. You don't need to copy and paste all this. Price per unit. So it's giving you the cells in parentheses, but it's referring to the names here. 107.50. 107.5. Salaries and benefits are 575, 580. 575, 580 stays the same. Distribution is 165. Miscellaneous is 175. So 165 stays the same. This is 175. And then you click OK. And it's there. And then you just click close. Notice how it does not say to show the new scenario you just made. It just says make the scenario and provide a report. And you don't want to show the scenario, because if you show the scenario, then you lose the values that are currently in there. And the values that are currently in there are not specifically part of any of the three scenarios. So as a best practice in business, when I'm using scenarios, I always start with one that, and I call it current or original or something like that, and save a scenario with the numbers that were in the spreadsheet. And then I make the rest of them. And then if I wanted to show or bounce back and forth from one scenario to another, because as soon as I click show, it'll change the values in those cells, which we're not to do here. So for right now, once I make the other scenario, I could close. And then with those three scenarios, it wants me to provide a report. So this is super easy and cool, and it makes you look mega slick in like a meeting. Say, well, I set up these scenarios, and I have this report that summarizes the effect of the current reduced price and increased price. Use total revenue, expenses, and net income. In that range is the result cells that should default to that. And then go to the scenario summary worksheet, which is going to make delete column D. Okay, so scenarios are individually associated with each worksheet where they were created. So they're not like table names or named ranges where you can only have them like they're holistic for the whole file. Like this is per sheet. So you got to be on the EcoPro income analysis worksheet. And then you go back here, what if analysis, scenario manager, and you want to make a summary. And you have two options. The second of what you're going to do, so you're going to start with a summary report, which is the top option. So make sure the top option's checked. If it didn't happen, I think it usually goes to the pivot table by default, but it should be the top button. It might default to that for you. And then the result cells for this summary are B25 to B27. So you can go and just, so it's going to try and pick up what it thinks you want, and you can get rid of that and just go B25 to B27. I backspaced out of there. Oops. Okay, here. Summary. Okay, so should have worked. Yeah, I can still backspace out of there. Yeah, okay, good. B25 to B27. I'm not sure what I did there. And then scenario summary. Again, I had to check on that because it tried to default to pivot table. Click OK. It'll calculate for a bit and think for a little bit. And then it creates this slick looking report. And all you got to do is get rid of column D because it's redundant, and then you're done. And it looks like you can pause the video and kind of take a look at this. And you should make sure that it is exactly what you have here down in the answers. If it doesn't show what you have there, it's because you didn't set the right result cells. So you can just delete the worksheet and do it again. And you got to watch that with the pivot table too. So the pivot table, you're going to do a pivot table report, which is similar for the same cells. So we're going to go back to the same sheet now that column D is deleted. I don't know why I have that open. And we are going here again to what if analysis, scenario manager, summary, and now it defaults to the same cells I used last time, which is good. And if it doesn't, you got to make sure you choose those, and then you click OK, and it creates it. So it doesn't say to move these worksheets or rename them in any way whatsoever. So don't, unless it tells you to do something. So now the pivot table is created. It looks like I'm definitely going to have to do some setting changes in there, and yes, I am. So that was step number 7. And now we're going to change. So this is an annoying step. It's a bit tedious. You can't do this you can actually, you can just highlight all that and change it to currency with 2 decimals by going to the home tab and doing it. But that's not the way they're asking you to do it. And if you do it that way, you'll get it wrong. You have to individually go to each of these fields and change the settings within the fields. And they're just showing you this so you know that it can be done that way. So you can either click on the field up here and go to value field settings, or you can click on it here. And either way, it's going to take you into this back end for that field. And you could see it's summarize total revenue by summing it all up. And from here, you go to number format and you go currency. Was it 0? I think it was 0 decimals. 0 decimals. So currency, 0 decimals, click OK, click OK again. Good. And then you do the same exact thing to the next one and the next one. So you got to do that 3 times. And then we're on to part B. Okay. So you can do it from here or from here. Either one's fine. So go to here, value field settings, number format, currency, 0 decimals. Click OK. Go to the next one. Right click here if you want to do it from there. Number format, currency, 0 decimals. So you have to do all 3 of them individually. If you do it the other way from the home tab, trust me, it will mark you wrong. Now we can go on to part B. Display negative values in red, enclosed in parentheses. So for this one, you are going to go, and this is just to ensure you get what you need, because depending on your language settings, it may not be an option. So if you go in and individually do these like this, like we did with the other settings, and go to value field settings, and you go to number format, we're at currency 0 decimals, but it doesn't give negative with parentheses in red as an option. So now you're going to highlight all the data that you just did currency 0 decimals, and you are going to go to the home tab, and or you can right click and go format. Either one's fine. Right click, format cells. And from here, if you go to custom, you're going to find what you need. And I'm going to show you which one it is here. And you got to keep in mind, this might not be in the same order, but under custom format, it's pretty close. Mine is right there. That's what you want. So stare at that for a while. That's what you're going to need to get this correct. Yeah, that's with the parentheses. Yes, okay. So there's no parentheses. Yeah, so there's a bunch of different options. It's got to be this. And when you click OK, you then have it parentheses, red, to identify the negative, no negative sign. Okay, so that was part B, and that you can do from format cells. You don't have to do that individually with each of the fields. And then remove the filter from the pivot table. You don't have to go up here and pull that out. See where it says filters? Just take this and drag it out. Gone. That was an easy one. Then Pedro asks you to compare these scenarios in a chart. So create a pivot chart as follows from this pivot table. So remember that you can't have a pivot chart without a pivot table. So obviously you just go to the pivot table here. Sitting anywhere in the pivot table, you go to pivot table analyze, and you create a chart from the pivot table. That's actually under nothing. It's right there. I always assume it's at the beginning, because when you go insert, you can insert pivot chart from here, drop down and go chart, but not if you're not sitting. You have to do it from pivot table analyze now. So insert pivot chart. Okay, clustered column it defaults to. That's what you want. You click OK. We're obviously going to position it. You know how this works every time. So it says change the value field settings, display negative. So that's down here. So we'll get to that later. So change the value field right here. Sorry, A8 to E21. So create a chart A8 E21. So A8. Don't touch the grid lines. E21, so go up to 21. So we can do this very easily now. We've done this so many times. And hide the field buttons to remove clutter from the chart if it's not already hidden. So the field buttons will be up in the tabs now for the chart. Notice, like I've left the pivot table. So pivot table, I had the analyze and the design tab. When I make a chart and I'm on the chart, I have analyze, design, and format. So if you go to the format tab sitting on the chart, design. Sorry, analyze, so much stuff. You hide them all right there. So pivot table analyze, hide the field buttons, Should look like that. If you scroll down and compare, that's about the same. And we're on to number 10. So number 10, we're going to go to the next worksheet, which is product mix. So save your file. You've added these additional worksheets onto there. You can pull this over a bit, go to the product mix worksheet. And what we're going to do here is we are going to use this solver model tool, and that will be the end of the case. So this is, well, one of the more complicated steps on the case, but it's really not, as long as you follow along very closely. Just slow the video down. What this is it's like an advanced goal seek. So goal seek is that thing we've done once, I think, so far. It's a tool where it says, what if I wanted this one to be this high? How much would I change that other cell by? And there's only the one test and the one change, the changing cell and the set cell. A solver is like a bunch of goal seeks at once, where you can change a bunch of parameters and have numerous variables. So that's the idea here. And it's a statistical projection model that if you were to do freehand is kind of annoying, but here Excel will do it for you. So we're going to the product mix worksheet. As soon as we get to the product mix worksheet, everything we're going to do here from this point forward is done in the solver and using the solver tool. So we're going to go to the data tab, and we're going to go over here and we're going to go to solver. Now, before we do, I want to just look at what we're adjusting here. Okay, so we're here. I think I was sitting in G1. It doesn't really matter where you're sitting when you go to start the solver. I just want you to see what's happening here before we go in there. So here's the cell we're going to be looking to maximize in terms of the optimal difference between these two mixes by making adjustments to these cells or making constraints to those cells so they can only be within a certain parameter. And then changes will be made to this sheet. So I want to remind you one more time, I mentioned this, if you do the solver model and you load your results in here, and then in the instructions, your results don't match the picture down here, you need to re-download the original start file, copy the entirety of this sheet. So you can just go in the corner and click the corner box and then go copy, and then go to your open file that you've been working on and paste right over by clicking on the corner box again and just Control V and paste right over it so that your data is back to the way it was. Because if you mess up any of the things in the solver, you're going to have to fix your data in order to get it right. It's quite easy to do. I'm just advising you, you're going to have to do a little bit of copying and pasting if the solver results you have here don't match the instructions. Hopefully they do. So if you follow along with exactly what I'm going to do, you should be okay. So wherever you're sitting, it doesn't really matter. Just go to the data tab and click solver. And once you go to the data tab and click solver, it's going to ask you what is the objective cell you're trying to set. And that is E24. So go down here and click on E24. If you click on it, it'll put the absolute referencing in. If you type it in, it'll put it in later. Either way is fine. You're going to be changing, again, B11 to D11. So if I go back up here where we were. Okay, B11 to D11 are the optimal product mix cells that we're going to be setting. So objective cells changing. And you can highlight those or you can type it right in. You could just go B11 to D11 if you want. Make sure you guys know how to type in a range at this point. It's week 11. And now you're going to add these constraints. So if you have any typos in the constraints, like when I initially did it, I actually screwed it up. I actually had, in one of these constraints, you have to have C19 must be equal to 38,500. I put C9. So then it screwed my whole sheet up. Unless you wanted C9 to be that, then it was actually correct. But you're being graded by Sam. It has to be exactly what they want. So once you get these two inputs in and you leave this set to max, you can also do min and value of. There's different ways you can do solver. Click into this box, empty, and start adding. So go add. And now in the instructions, it'll give you these four constraints, A, B, C, D. So A is C19 must be 38,500. So this is fairly intuitive. You want C19, you want the total quantity of units, which is in C19. So you can type C19 or you can click on it. Either way is fine, but you have to have C19 in here equal to, so you just use the drop down and choose the appropriate setting, the setting that's requested, 38,500. Okay, now if you click OK, you'll see that constraint has been added, and you can go back to the instructions and make sure it's right. C19 equal to, must be is obviously equal to. Next thing is for the entire range, B11 to D11, that has to be at least 10,000. So at least is greater than or equal to 10,000. So go back and add another one. And if you don't want to have to keep going back and forth, you can just keep clicking add from here instead of OK, and you can do all four at once. So you can highlight or type it in. I like highlighting because you can't mess it up. So greater than or equal to, and then type in 10,000. Let's add the next one. Next one is same thing, the range, that range. So again, this same range must be an integer, like a whole number. So that you don't go equals integer. It's actually an option abbreviated by int. So you choose int, and that's your next one. And then you add the final one, which is the remaining values for each assembled part. So that's I6 to I16 have to be greater than or equal to 0 because the company cannot produce more shoes than the parts available, right? So that makes sense. So I6 to I16, or you could highlight it. Where's I? I'm kind of sitting over it. So let's just type it in. I6 to I16 colon I16 must be straight up, what? How did they word that? Greater than or equal to 0. So greater than or equal to 0, the number 0. And now click OK. And now you can stare at these four things to make sure they're right. So I6 to I16 is greater than or equal to 0. That's definitely right. B11 and D11 should be greater than or equal to 10,000 and integers. That's right. And then C19 should be 38,500. So assuming these are all right, this is set, this is set, this is set, you can now click solve. And when you click solve, stuff is going to change to the spreadsheet. You're probably not even going to see it really, but you want to click solve. And after you click solve, you can see it because I wasn't over top of some of it. You can see all these changes that have been made. And you're going to keep the solver solution. You're going to create an answer report. Okay, is it an outline report or answer report? So run the solver, create an answer report. And you also return to the box. So you want to make sure you're really going slowly with the video here and you do everything exactly as I'm doing it to get it right, to get it marked correct by Sam. You click OK. Takes you back to this box. And finally, you're going to load this into a certain, or save this to a certain range of cells. So click load save. And your range, which it already knew. Oh, I think that might have been where I was sitting. But wherever it goes, just, you want this range. G19 to G26. You can type it in or highlight it. And then you're going to click save. Not load, but save. Save the solver to G19 to G26. Save. And then you can close the box. So if you go and take a look at these, and then you go down here and take a look at what you have in the answers, and they match, and mine do, you're good. If you go down here and you've got something totally different here, you have to remember that a bunch of stuff has changed elsewhere in the spreadsheet. And in lieu of going around and trying to adjust all these numbers and making them look like the picture, the easiest thing to do, as I've already said now twice, download the original file, copy it in, you'll be fine. And then just clear. You'll also need to clear the solver right out, because even after you copy and paste over what you put in here, if you go to solver, this model will still be here. And you need to reset all. I'm not doing any of that because I did it correct. So now I can officially save my file, close my file, and submit. Let's see how we did. And this will be my favorite part of the video as always. Last week I had 100 without having to fix anything. We'll see how we do. File is named correctly. Let's grab submit. File is graded. Let's get the grade summary. Throw it in downloads with my other stuff. And we will open up. As you can see, that is a demonstration step by step for this video, showing you how to earn 100%, everything I did in there, including where I placed that chart. I was a little worried that might come back with some points off, but it did. It was good. So I was talking about this one here. You got to get it inside those. Just always ignore the way the instructions jam it right into the corners. Just leave that little bit of extra space. and you'll be good to go. That's 100%. So again, this week was all about projections. And to start off, we added that solver item to the toolbar. We did some variable data tables, single and double. We messed with some charts. That was actually in the opposite order there. Work with scenarios, work with pivot tables. We did the solver and the answer report. You know, I never actually showed you the answer report. Just to conclude here, we'll do that. So the answer report had shown up just to the left. They always go to the left, right? And it didn't say to rename it or do anything to it. It just said to check the box that made it. So just as a result of checking that box, you got this slick looking cool report and you got 100%. And that is it for the week 11 video. I will see you for our final video in week 12, and then you got the custom project coming up. Make sure you go to lab or go to your online lecture for that week if you have any questions, because there will be no video for the custom project. You have learned all this stuff throughout the course of the semester. That is the point at which you show us that you can do it yourself. I'll see you next week.